All right, perfect. Well, we're on the hour now, so thank you so much for joining everyone. I've just started recording, so for those who might miss the first few couple of minutes as folks join, they can see the recording on our YouTube channel, and I'll add the link to the YouTube channel in our live chat as well. We're very excited to have Jen Looper do this session with us. She's been doing a couple of really amazing sessions with the reactors recently, and we're really excited to learn about building a green browser extension today. Just a couple of housekeeping notes before we begin. Live captions are on, so if you need captions at all or caption translation, you can click the three buttons in your toolbar. I believe it should be just on the top right there. You can turn those on and follow along there. Please, if you have the chance, in the chat window as well, there's a link to our check-in. If you check into that link, any links that Jen will be sharing during today's session are available there pretty easily. You will just enter the code 13452, and that's in the link as well, so you can follow along there. And then lastly, I would just like to mention that we do have a code of conduct. Just please be respectful in the chat. Please don't, please just behave with respect. And I believe Jen has that code of conduct slide. Okay, perfect. So yeah, I'll let her take it from here. And yeah, as always, the Q&A window is open. So if you have any questions at all, please type them there. If you have any problem hearing audio or anything like that, please feel free to submit anything that you need to over there, and we're all monitoring that, so no big deal at all. And without further ado, I'll pass it over to Jen.
Awesome. Thanks very much, Iman. So this is a talk that I'm giving in the Green Tech series, and it just struck me that, we're all trying to be a little bit more green, thinking a little bit more along the lines of sustainability. And I'm just wondering if everyone could type in the chat one little green, tiny green thing that you're going to do today. So for me, I'm using my newly acquired glass straw. I feel like this is an accident waiting to happen. But it's a really very nice drinking experience, I have to say, for your summer beverages. And I just wonder, what are the little things that people are doing? Maybe we can inspire each other to think about, just one little thing we can do to change, or to a little behavior that we've adopted that helps make our lives just a little bit more environmentally friendly. One thing I'm thinking a lot about recently is plastic pollution. And I was at the grocery store recently, and it seems to me that it's almost impossible to buy something these days that's not wrapped up in plastic, and it's very unfortunate. So I think some stores are making available different types of containers. Bring your own containers. It's very interesting, and in a post-COVID world, which we're hopefully approaching, how we're going to get back to our green behaviors. So this is just something that's kind of top of mind for me. But let me just introduce myself. So I'm Jen. I'm a cloud developer advocate lead. I'm also a GDE, Google Developer Expert, and I work on the academic team within the Next Generation team. So we are Next Generation. We're all about the next generation of learners, of students, faculty, anyone who wants to learn something new, career changers. I myself was a career changer. I'm trained as a French teacher, and now I'm here doing web apps and mobile apps. I'm really interested in hardware hacking. I do love to make mobile apps when I have the chance. My previous job was working on NativeScript apps. I love Vue.js. It's a cool community, machine learning and applied machine learning. So taking your machine learning models and using them within web apps, it's a particular focus of mine. I think that's a really interesting area of research. And so I'm also a founder, so I run a nonprofit called Front End Foxes, and we're all about training women who are looking to, again, switch careers or learn new things in the front end technology world. Women people who identify as women and who'd like to join us on Front End Foxes. We also have a boot camp that we're running. And you can always visit my personal website. I'm at jenlooper.com. You can also find me on Twitter at jenlooper. So enough blabbering about me. I like this slide. I like to just look at it. It makes me happy. I think these are really beautiful leaves. I also love monstera leaves. I have some monstera plants that are dying slowly here in Boston. But in this talk, I'm going to be talking about how you can build a green browser extension. Now, I wonder in the chat if folks can pop in and just tell us whether you've ever tried or successfully built a browser extension. It's an area of web technologies that's really a lot of fun, but you don't really think about how you can use them, or how useful they can be until you start building one sometimes, or if you happen to discover one that you just use all the time and you realize, wow, this thing is really useful. I have an idea of a browser extension I'd like to build that would help me stay on track for my diet. So there's a particular diet that has you kind of triage different foods by color, and you're supposed to only eat certain numbers. Like you're only supposed to eat like 3 purples and 2 greens and 1 red. And if I could make a browser extension that I could just pull up and check off what I've eaten during the day, that would be an interesting thing to build. So if anybody wants to collaborate with me and build this diet extension, I think that this would be a fun thing to try to make. But yeah, so let's go ahead and start talking about well, basically the idea behind building this browser extension and then actually building it. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about sustainable software development, and then we're going to code this thing together so that you can have it in your own browser and use it. So this is our little green browser extension that we're going to create today. So what's the big idea here? We've been talking a lot, and we'll be talking in this series a lot about sustainable software development. I hope you're able to go to the talks by Asim, who is our green software lead in cloud advocacy. So he is really the person who's driving this forward, and he launched a really cool website called principles.green, and it's the concepts that we're using to create an idea of sustainable software development. So what is this thing that we're talking about? Well, it's really an emerging discipline at the intersection of climate science, software practices and architecture, electricity markets, and hardware and data center design. So it's really at this kind of fulcrum in between all of these things. So if you are a software engineer, and you want to get into sustainable software development, there's a track, but you need to also think about how your work is fitting into new research in climate science and how hardware influences your software development choices. Hardware considerations are a big part of this, it seems to me. And we on the software side, we can contribute to this as well. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how we might consider doing that. So visit principles.green, take a look at this website. It's a really interesting website that makes you think. So what are the goals of becoming a sustainable software engineer or a green software developer? So basically, by following the recommendations that we've laid out in principles.green, a sustainable software engineer can make decisions that have meaningful impact on the carbon impact of their applications. So let's take a look at these 8 recommendations. So here we are. I'm just going to make this a little bit smaller. There we go. And before I start in on this, I want to show you the green software principles.green, the principles of green software engineering. So it's this website, and it kind of walks through all of the things that I'm just going to outline right here. And you can kind of educate yourself on what these look like. So the 8 principles are that we must build applications that are carbon efficient, build applications that are energy efficient, not quite the same thing, consume electricity with the lowest carbon intensity, build applications that run on older hardware, which is kind of interesting. You would think that you'd want to always have the newest, shiniest, most efficient, but if you don't have to do that kind of upgrade, maybe you can make streamlined applications that run on this older hardware so you don't have to keep replacing and replacing. You want to run servers at a high rate of utilization, which is an interesting thought, but what you want to be able to do is have your servers running at like 75% as opposed to having an array of servers that each run at like 20%. You want to, max out the utilization of your servers so as to maximize your energy efficiency. You want to reduce the amount of data and the distance it must travel across the network. So this is something that is probably familiar for folks who are working in the cloud. So when you launch a website, you're asked to pick the subscription and the data center that's closest to you that you want to use. So I'm always using my East Coast subscription servers, so that the data doesn't have to travel such a long distance. I wouldn't pick West Coast because I'm in Boston, so I pick East Coast. And then instead of shaping supply to meet demand, try shaping demand to match supply. This is kind of a headbanger. But if you can think about how you can influence and educate folks to reduce their demand and thus match supply, this is the reduce part of reduce, reuse, recycle, right? So this is something to think about. And then you can also focus on end-to-end optimizations that increase overall carbon efficiency. So this is the kind of holistic idea. You're looking at your, electrical usage, you're looking at your hardware, looking at your software, and just thinking about how all of these things play into the carbon efficiency of your applications. So as software developers, we have to have a think around this, right? Can we actually build a carbon-friendly app? If we say yes, what does that mean? What does that look like? If you're going to greenfield a new application, what's that going to look like if you want to build carbon friendly? Should you go ahead and build a website? Should you go ahead and build a mobile app? What about a desktop app? What will consume the least amount of electricity? What will be used ad hoc instead of running constantly in the background? How are you going to design a website or a mobile app to be energy efficient? It used to be back, I would say 2 years ago, there was a fashion of having these videos, really big videos, high res, running in the background on loop in websites. I'm thankful that we're over that trend because it always annoyed me. But these are getting that's a very heavy way to build a website, and it just is not necessary. Maybe we can build something a little bit more, a little bit lower, in terms of weight of the website. The JavaScript community needs to sit up and pay attention to this, to the concept of building lightweight, because there's a huge amount of JavaScript bloat in websites. I feel like people are starting to pay a little bit of attention to this, but the amount of frameworks on top of frameworks that we use, and the way we just slap in images without optimizing them, we as web developers do have a responsibility to think about how we're building and don't just slap things live. Let's think about how to make our websites and our web assets light and as efficient as possible. Cloud hosting can help you spin up your assets when they're requested and when they're needed, and then when they're not needed, they can spin them down. And also an offline first strategy can help keep energy requests low. I really like this idea. So you're saving into local storage, perhaps some assets that you only need to call once and refresh ad hoc. So maybe you can think about building your website offline first. This is creating, for example, a progressive web app, a PWA, that is using workers in the background for storage and for saving data and making things more offline friendly. So this is another opportunity that we have as web developers. So what I'm proposing is that we follow some of these principles and build something that's basically hosted locally and can answer several of these principles. So I'm suggesting that we go ahead and build a browser extension. It's going to sit in our browser. It's only going to be called ad hoc, and it's not going to be pinging and making requests all the time. We're just going to use it when we need it. So this answers 4 principles. It answers that the idea that we're building both carbon and energy efficient applications. We're reducing the amount of data and the distance it must travel across the network. So we're reducing data flowing in and out. And then instead of shaping supply to meet demand, try shaping demand to match supply. So that's the concept of reducing the amount of data that we're having going back and forth and back and forth. So a green browser extension looks something like this. It can help you make educated decisions to manage your personal energy usage choices. So that's the idea behind building this browser extension, and we'll go into this in a second. It's hosted locally. I didn't even bother to deploy it to the store. I feel like it's not really worth bothering with. This is just because these browser extensions are something that are interesting only probably to me and a few other people. Maybe I'm wrong and somebody will deploy this to the store and it'll become popular, but I don't know. It's only called ad hoc. It's only called when it's needed. And then it's also built with vanilla JavaScript. I didn't use any frameworks at all, which for me as a Vue developer was an interesting experiment. You get to manipulate that DOM all by your own self. And there's very little overhead with this browser extension. So I want to just insert a little caveat here that not all browser extensions are created equal. My colleague sent me this screenshot. So on Edge, he has, this is, I think it's LastPass. Yes, I know it's a password manager. It's LastPass. And it consumes quite a lot of CPU and memory. And there's the power usage is not too bad, but it's at least you can kind of gauge these. But this is something that does ping. It uses a lot of memory and it pings back and forth to make sure your passwords are all managed. So, I mean, this is a production level, heavy duty browser extension that that is just live all the time. So it's not like not all browser extensions are created with the architecture I have in mind for good reason. This is not something that would be that would work with this architecture. So I always think that the greenest app is the one you don't really build. You're not going to build an app. This is just a little extension. It's just going to sit in your browser and do the job it's asked to do without too much overhead. And it gives you information. So what we're going to build is this one. This is going to be pinging an API when you ask it to. And it's going to check your region. So I'm in New England. So in this instance, I did US-NEISO. That's my region. New England ISO, whatever that means. And it just grabs back the carbon usage of my region. And then more importantly for me, I'm really curious about the fossil fuel percentage. It turns out New England uses quite a lot of fossil fuels to generate electricity. That's kind of useful information. So what my use case for this thing is that when I want to run the dryer, which is a natural gas dryer, or cook dinner, maybe I could do that at a time that where the carbon usage and the fossil fuel percentages are a little bit lower. So this is just, you check your browser extension and you get a color in your extension. So here it was green. Right now, I haven't checked recently, but I believe we're in the kind of dark yellow. It's not great because it's warming up in New England. And I just check what the carbon intensity of my region is according to this API, and then I make decisions accordingly. So that's what the use case is for this extension. So let's go ahead and build it. We're going to build a browser extension. We're going to use the C02Signal API. It's going to change the color of the icon based on your carbon intensity in your region. You'll get a quick readout of your region's carbon status, and knowledge equals power. So whenever you want to do something carbonically intense, you can go ahead and check your browser extension and make the decision whether to do that thing or not. Okay. So I want to show you what this extension looks like on your browser. It does work on Edge, Chrome, and Firefox. I actually couldn't figure out how to get browser extensions to install in Safari. I didn't try too hard because I rarely use Safari, but I do know that it works on these Chromium browsers. Let me show you what it looks like. It's not going to work right now because it's looking at a particular version that's not built yet. So we're going to build this and then it's going to start loading up. Right now it's stuck in the loading area, but it has two screens. And I put in my region name and then the API key that I get from the people who do this API. So I'll show you how to do that, and you can build along with me. All right. So what I want you to do now is I want you to go ahead and do a couple things. I want you to go to a link that I believe is in chat. It's for a repo that I've created for you called Carbon Trigger Extension. And then I want you to grab that locally, clone it, and then navigate to the start branch. And then navigate to the root and do npm install for your dependencies. And then let's explore the files together. So let me show you what it looks like. So right here, we're at my repo, Carbon Trigger Extension. I want to watch people cloning this. We're at 49. Can we get to 50? Okay. Go ahead and clone. All right, guys, boost me up. At any rate, you're going to clone this, and then you're going to go ahead and switch branches. So this is the main branch, which has all the built code. You're going to navigate to the start branch in Visual Studio Code. So if you have Visual Studio Code, once you clone, you open it in Visual Studio Code, and you can see I'm on the start branch. I could switch to main, but I'm going to stay on start, not start. Start branch. Okay, I want to just see if anybody's cloning. Come on, folks, you can do it. Fork and clone. I'm going to go ahead and pretend like everyone's cloning this thing now. And just take a look at this code. So let me arrange my browser a little bit here. So we'll put this over here, and we'll go over to the PowerPoint here, make this a little smaller. So what I want to do is take a look. You're going to go to the Start branch, and then you're going to you can open a terminal, and then you're going to do npm install in the root of your Carbon extension. So that'll get all the pieces that you need. It's going to need Webpack locally. It's going to use Webpack to build the extension, and then you're going to load that into Edge. It also uses Axios to do the API query, so you're going to need those two things. So all you have to do is go grab the code, go to Start, and then npm I or npm install to get the packages that you need. So let's just walk through the code a little bit. Don't want code tour right now. Okay, so we can take a look at a couple things here. Take a look in the distributed folder. You're going to find a manifest, and your defaults are all set here. It has a script that is designating as a background script. So this is the script that runs in the background to change the color of the icon, and we'll walk through how that's built in a minute. So that's in the dist folder. Also in dist, you have an index HTML file. That's where you're going to create those two screens. It's going to be the form to put in your API key and your region, and then you're going to go ahead and have that second, and it'll show you the carbon usage and the fossil fuel percentage for your region. So it's kind of flipping between two screens, and you can always switch your region. That's also useful. A nice enhancement, maybe, would be that it would detect your region automatically. But again, I don't want things pinging in the background, so maybe it's easier just to go ahead and set it manually. So that's another script that's in dist. Also in dist is that background file. That's this. We're going to be working in this at the end. I'm going to do a little edit right here. And then in index, when you build, which looks like I don't have mine built yet, right, because I'm on the Start branch. Once you do npm build in package.json, so it's going to use Webpack to build your extension for you, and it's going to create a file called index.js, and that's going to be all built for you. So, and then the other thing I want to show you is in source folder. The rest of the work that you're going to do is editing this file in source, and this is where the JavaScript lives. And what we're gonna do together is we're gonna follow the bouncing leaves and just build this code all together. Okay. And just to give you an idea of how you build and add the extension, what you do is you do npm run build in your root. Once you've done npm install, npm run build, it's not going to build properly because this code is incomplete on this branch. And then you add your extension to Edge or to whatever browser by going to the ... menu on the right, go to extensions, and then you're going to load unpacked. So this is how you test browser extensions. You can always reload, you can remove it, you can reload it. And this is the process. So you're going to build, and then you're going to open up extensions, load unpacked, and you can reload it if you need to. So that's where they live in the browser. It's kind of a fun process. Okay, let's go back to slides. And there's a little bit of extra work that I'd like you to do before we start. So I want to show you the API we're going to be using, and it is the electricity map API. It's actually by a company called Tomorrow. They just released a very nice weather app. It's a pretty good one. You could test it out. So you take a look at this energy map here, electricitymap.org, and you'll find that it opens up into a map, and it will show you your zone. So I know Stephen's in Ireland, so I'm going to cross the Atlantic Ocean and go over here. And your zone, if I click, is IE. So just keep that in mind. That's the value you're going to add into your browser extension. And it also has a really kind of interesting little crib sheet here of the greenest areas is Tasmania. New Zealand's doing well. New England is always kind of in the middle because I think we use a lot of natural gas, honestly. See, ISO New England, not great. And then you come down to certain other areas of the world where the carbon intensity is really quite intense. But if anyone's here in Europe, France is doing very well. Go France. Sweden always does, all these countries up here always do very nicely. So I'm going to cross the ocean again and go back to my region, which is here. So I am ISO New England, USNE, ISNE. That's my region. You also are going to need an API key from C02Signal.com. So you're going to go to C02Signal.com and get an API key. I think what you do is you fill in your email address. It's kind of a strange process. So C02Signal. Yeah, so you sign up, you put your email here, you sign up for the beta, and then that will give you an API key. It's kind of a little unusual. It's not what it seems, but it's pretty quick. So you'll be able to get an API key pretty quick. Okay, so once you have all these things, I'm just going to check to see who is forking this thing. It would better. Thank you. We're up to 51. All right, here we go. Okay, at least 2 people are going to have a browser extension by the end of this talk. Very good. Okay, so let's go ahead and open up Visual Studio Code and take a look at the things we're supposed to be doing. So the first thing we're going to do is go to source index and look for the first area where we're supposed to be adding. So we just scroll around. So there's 7, 6, 4, 2, 3, 1. So we're going to build out our init, which is the initial code that runs. And we're going to just check to see if anything is in local storage, which is where we're going to store our API key and our region code. And we're going to pick it up. So I'm going to go ahead and leave that commented in. And we're going to put 2 constants here. We're going to put stored API key and stored region. And we're going to be storing those in a minute, but right now I'm just going to add the code to pick up those keys. So I am going to not inflict my keyboard on you, and I'm going to go ahead and copy paste this in. I have a very clicky keyboard, so it looks like this. So we're going to take this API key, get the API key and the stored region, and get that region name. Okay, so those are the 2 things for that. The next thing we need to do is to manage local storage inputs. So again, in source index.js, find the bouncing leaf number 2, and we're going to start building out the setup user method. We're going to set the user entered API key and region. So this is where we actually set that information. So when they type in the form, their API key and their region name, it's going to be set in local storage. Now watch out. Local storage refers to the local storage of your browser extension, which is like a tiny app that lives in your browser. So some people can get a little confused and start looking in their main browser's local storage for those values to be set. So what you're going to do is you're going to go to your browser extension eventually when you need to debug, and you can use the inspector within the browser extension and test for local storage values there. So that's an important thing to think about. Okay, so let's go to number 2, which is in setup user right here. For me, it's line 62, setup user. We're going to manage local storage here. And we're going to add some code here. Number 2.
Jen, sorry to interrupt you for a second. Josiah has a question in the chat that I think is time sensitive, so I'm just going to interrupt you. They asked, where did you put the API key in the JS file?
You're on the start branch?
I believe they are.
Okay,
so if Josiah, if you could just clarify, please.
Yeah, so you don't ever hard code that API key in this code base. What you're going to get your API key and then store it, maybe like I have mine right here, right out in the open. I just have it in this node, because what you're going to do is you're going to enter that in the form once the browser extension is built, and then it's going to be stored in local storage. So that's never hard coded. So just keep it aside, put it in a little note for yourself. Sorry, I should have mentioned that. And just save it, because you're going to use it at the end. Is that okay? Let me look at chat. You're still working to get the API key. It should be It should be emailed to you. You can check your trash as well. So for Tamar, what you're going to do is you're going to be in Visual Studio Code, and you have forked the repo that I mentioned, and then you're going to go to the start branch. Check out the start branch. If you don't want to code along, you can just go to the main branch where everything is already built. And also, you can always look at the main branch in case there's any, in case you get confused. So I'm going to keep going. Just save your API key. Worst case scenario, I'll share mine at the end if it doesn't come. Okay, so let's see. So we were at number 2. So this is where I'm setting the key, the local storage information that I need. So I'm getting the API key and the region name from the user's entered form. All saved in local storage. Local storage is a little magic box that is extremely helpful to be able to manage nicely. Okay. The next thing we have to do, also in index.js, that's in the source folder. We're still in source index.js. For this whole thing, we're going to park here, basically do that. I'm going to just not use my terminal right now. Oops. There we go. Okay, so the next thing we have to do is once the user inputs are set up in the setup user, we're going to make an API call to get the region's carbon intensity. So we're going to make this API call right here in setup user. So what the process is, the person's going to be building out this form, inputting their API key and region name, and then we're going to have a little loader as we make the call. If I could get this thing to go. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and display carbon usage and pass in the API key and region name that I'm grabbing out of local storage right here. So that is calling a function called display carbon usage. And that is up here on line 32 for me. So here is the place where we're going to call that, that API. We're going to use Axios, which is a nice library that we folks in JavaScript world tend to use a lot to call APIs. And I have here that I'm using the C02Signal API at the latest version, passing in my country code, and my header is the API key. And now, if you really wanted to, you could hard code your API key right here, but we're not going to do that because we already wrote out that whole local storage routine. So let's see what we have to do next. Okay, we're going to display usage and carbon source. So let's look for number 4, which is actually in the response of this carbon usage function here. So number 4 is right here. You're going to display the usage and the carbon source. This is a kind of a chunk of code and a little bit of math that's being called to massage the data into something that will display nicely. But this is where we have the text content, which is displayed, and the fossil fuel text content. So we have usage text content, it's set. Fossil fuel text content, it's also set. So this is on that second screen of the browser extension. This is what's displayed. You remember it said like 350 grams per kilowatt hour and 20% of fossil fuels used to generate electricity. So that's all coming from the API. So let's go ahead and get that set. And again, I'm going to go ahead and grab this. You can grab it if you want from the main branch. It's totally fine. So you're going to build out, that's number 4. And then we're going to go ahead and start talking to the runtime that's running in the background. So Edge, Firefox, and Chrome all use Chromium as a runtime in the background, which is very helpful because we can be sure that this stuff is going to work on all of these browsers. And what this is doing is it's using the runtime, which is running in the background, and we're sending little messages back and forth saying, hey, I just got a new value. Can you please update the icon color and set it to a different color? So here we're going to send this initial message. This is the default that we're asking the browser extension to display. So Chrome runtime send message, tell what action it's going to be using, and then sending the color green as the default value. So let's go ahead and do that. At number 5, where's number 5? Right here. So this is also in init. Number 5, set the icon to be generic green like that. Don't forget to save your work. Okay. And then we're going to calculate the color of the icon based on the carbon intensity. So let's set that up. We're going to go ahead and massage the response data of carbon intensity to a certain number, and then we're going to calculate the color. I'm not super satisfied with my function to calculate the color. I think that it should be more nuanced because I'm constantly getting a darkish yellow when it should be like a lighter yellow. You can go ahead and tweak this area to how you like the colors to display, but this is where it's set up. So this is in 6. So let's go ahead and look for 6, which is up here again in the response. Remember, we're getting data out of the API. So let's go ahead and set that CO2 value and pass it to this calculate color function. Like that. Okay, we're almost at the finish line. The next thing we have to do is send a message via that Chrome runtime to change the color of the icon. And that's in calculate color. Remember, we just invoked that that function calculate color. So let's dig around and find the calculate color area right here. So calculate color is at the top, line 17 for me. Let's build this out with one more thing here. We have to update the icon. So you can see in this code, I'm taking some hard-coded values that might be coming back from that API, and then kind of figuring out, well, if it's this, I'll set it to this color, which is like green, and then this is like a very dark red, because the carbon reading coming back is quite high. And then I'm tinkering around with the closest number and sending a color code over to the runtime. So it's going to say, send the message, update the icon, and send it a value. So last time we said just turn it green. This time we're saying send it that closest color value. So let's just type that in. Like that. Chrome runtime send message, update the icon, and pass through the value closest color. And the very last thing we have to do before we build and deploy is we're going to go ahead and work in dist. Let me show you the slide. In the background file, this is the file that's telling the icon in the background what it's going to do. So we're going to do a little bit of code here. We're going to add this if the message of action. Remember, we say the message action is update icon. So if we're telling it to update the icon, we're going to set the icon to that color that it's passing through. So it's going to be it's going to go ahead and pass a color, and then it's going to call this draw icon value. Draw icon function like this. So let's just do that. Add that in there. Okay, so we're going to ask it to draw the icon, and I borrowed this from the Energy Lollipop extension, which is a really cute browser extension, but it only gives you data for California, which doesn't do me a lot of good. So what it does is it grabs a color value and then it draws a circle and sets that to be the icon. So really pretty clever, and it's using the Canvas API, so it's pretty straightforward, and it works nicely across browsers. And that, my friends, is the whole show. So what we have to do now is go ahead and build our extension. So I'll open up my terminal. I'm going to type npm run build. Still on my start branch, and it's going to go ahead and grab Webpack and build. This is some warnings, but that's not a problem. We're using this in a non-production environment. So it went ahead and built successfully, which is great. And you can see in dist, it should have built a main.js file. Yes, it built a main.js file, which is all of this compiled code that it built for me. So then what we're going to do is go and load this thing in my extensions file. So I'm going to open up in Edge, my 3 dots, go to extensions, and I'm going to reload this thing. Let's see if it will pick up. So it is, at this point, should be clean. Yeah, oh, I'm still on Sweden, okay, because of the last talk I did. So, but this is loaded nicely. So let me enter my region name, which is, let me refresh my memory, USNEISNE. And the API key is this. And it loads, and then it says, oh my goodness, this is not the moment to run the dryer, friends. So, but like I said, the colors are a little off because according to this electricity map, it's not that bad. But see how much natural gas we use? That's why we always get a rough reading. But anyway, according to this browser extension, this is perhaps not the moment. 51% of fossil fuels are being used to generate electricity. So let's maybe find a time when, to run the dryer, when we have a less energy, a time that's a little bit more energy efficient. So here we are. So we have successfully built a browser extension, and congratulations. Now you know when to run an errand, when to run the dryer. Just consult your ad hoc browser extension, and you'll have knowledge, which is power. Knowledge is power. So I'm going to answer questions in chat, but I just want to leave you with this idea that the greenest web asset is the slimmest, the one with the least overhead, the one that's only called ad hoc. So you built something slim that helps you make greener decisions. So that's kind of the concept that I wanted to give you in this talk. And that is a thank you screen with my pretty green leaves. Again, you can always find me at jenlooper.com. And stay green, my friends. Let me go ahead and look at chat. If anyone needs an API key, okay, Stephen, yeah, I was thinking that maybe people have to check their junk folders, yeah. Oh yes, and also, have you seen Blackle? Google, I wonder if it's still live. And it had this whole thing about how it was saving a lot of energy, and I think that was a bit of a scam. So let me scroll up. Is it possible to link this up with another extension that monitors carbon sequestration in your local area? Anything's possible, and I like this idea, and I would be grateful if you would fork this and build that out and see what it looks like. Yes, so you got your extension, good. Thanks, Stephen, for the tip. Yeah. Yeah, Josiah, you can go ahead, and I've got articles, I've got the slide deck, everything is in this GitHub repo. So honestly, like if you want to just go back and take a look, this is all, like, I try to make the best README possible. And then there should be, slides here. And I think there's probably recordings I can link up as well, but it's pretty straightforward if you just do it side by side with the slides on the start branch. Or if you just want to run it, just go to main and run. No, it's not a problem. Are we still at 52? Very nice. Okay, any other questions? Yes, Blackle. Is that thing still live? It's like, I'm really curious, like Blackle.com maybe? No? Always scared. Yeah, okay, it is Blackle.com. So it's neither secure nor oh, lovely. Yeah, they used to have a counter on how, yeah, 8 million watt hours saved. I just don't know. I had a chat with Asim about this one, and he just said it just wasn't sure that what we thought was happening was actually happening. But I'd love it if it was actually working. Yeah. So any other questions I can help you with? If there's any information or anything I can send along. Oh, I did want to show while I'm sharing my screen that we've launched the Green Software Foundation, and you can join if you're interested. You can join in our newsletter, and then you can also participate. So we're starting a bunch of meetings. They're gathering community members, and Asim is here. He's our chairperson. But they're if you want to join, I want to join as an employee of a member organization, or you can join as an individual contributor. Or you can get your organization to join. So I joined as a community person. So I'm curious what we're going to do with this foundation. It should be a lot of fun. Yeah, but yeah, let me know if there's anything I can help you with. Reach out on Twitter, reach out on LinkedIn. Let's be green together. It's good fun. It's fun and it's good for the environment.